This is the Introduction to Business Get Hired lecture series. This is episode 2, Crafting a Resume. Let's get it.
Oh yeah, it's business time. Pencils down, ideas up high. Time to learn how profits fly. Oh yeah, it's business time.
All right, welcome back. On last episode, we went through an overview of the application process. Now we're going to drill down a little bit further into what it takes to set up those opportunities and get those jobs. And that's starting with the resume. And so we're going to dive into the details here. And without further ado, let's get it. All right, so our agenda for this video is first we're going to talk about the purpose of a resume, and then go over the structure, talk about how to highlight your skills and accomplishments on the resume, and to weave those into your experiences. We'll go through some examples in the Virginia Tech Guide, as well as my own personal walkthrough of the evolvement of my own personal resume throughout the years since college. And then we'll go into overall, that's going to lead into cover letters on the next video. But let's get into the purpose of a resume. So a resume is about a storytelling tool, not a task list. Well, I like that it highlights storytelling tool. I think that's a skill that you develop over time on also gaining the right experience so that you could tell a story, but being able to use your resume to really weave your skill into any sort of position. And that's, we'll talk about transferable skills, but you can use those and have versatile experiences, especially in the business world, to be able to apply those skills to different various roles, as I have in my career. So designed to earn the interview, not get the job. So really, resumes initially are about setting up opportunities, getting the interview. I think throughout the interview process, it's also important because it's usually what an interviewer is going to look over at the beginning of the interview, or just to get some context of who they're interviewing. It's going to be constantly revisited. So it is important, not only to earn the interview, but throughout the process as well. And just to highlight that, total applicants sent, and I had about 6 interviews completed out of that. And 4 of those were through my resume, 2 were through LinkedIn. So you do have to earn the interview. And so we're really talking about the top of funnel here, not necessarily the bottom of the funnel, although I said it does play a role throughout here as well. But as far as the resume's bread and butter is up here, getting the opportunity set up. And then it's up to you to earn the role from there once you get in front of somebody. Your job is to present a clear relative narrative of impact. So talk about how to highlight impact on your resume. Let's dive a little bit deeper before we move on to resume structure. First, we'll look at some of these statistics. So only 3% of resumes result in getting an interview. And if you, again, look at the funnel here, and you consider 4 divided by 122, that would be about 3%. So it's true to my experience there. 83% of recruiters reported more likely to hire a candidate that has a well-formatted resume. So having a good format that's aesthetically pleasing to the eye, regardless of what it says in there, I'd say is important. I think visually it has to be good format and professional, and also just if you unfocus your eyes, have a visual appeal to it. So we'll look at that as we go. 63% of hiring managers prefer a one-page resume. It's important to note. I think it depends on the job. I think some jobs it's much higher than 63%. Some jobs it doesn't necessarily matter, or they even expect longer. We'll talk about that. 75% of job seekers never hear back from employers after applying for a job. A lot of that is because of the ATS scanning. We'll talk about ATS scanning, but it filters out 75% there. So that's probably related, as we talked about in the last video. Nearly 80% of recruiters admit that they reject resumes with typos and grammar mistakes. So Typos and grammar mistakes are a good way of getting your resume denied. Also, when we talk about ATS, it's not something to be scared of, it's something to be aware of. And want to be part of the 25%. The way to do that is to tailor the resume to get keywords and to avoid typos and grammar mistakes. You'll see that also, it's even once you get past those filters, 1 out of 5 recruiters do only scan under 60 seconds before they will reject a candidate. That doesn't mean that 4 out of 5 will look at it for more than 60, so that's a good sign. 84% of recruiters reject resumes that are informal in their tone, so they want to be professional and they want it to be well formatted on a high agreeable basis there. 77% of recruiters use LinkedIn to hire. Also, back to the funnel. That's true to my story. Remember, 2 of these interviews came from LinkedIn recruiters. So 77%. So highlights the importance of LinkedIn. We'll get into that on a later episode. 91% of the recruiters prefer resumes with soft skills. Remember the soft skills? Soft skills that we had in our Virginia Tech Career Planning Guide. Professional competencies, remember these soft skills, so communication, teamwork, leadership, creativity, professionalism, global perspective, digital fluency. And we'll also talk about how you could weave these soft skills into the bullet points of your resume. Okay, we'll continue on. 75% of resumes or CVs are rejected due to format, content, and lack of keywords. So both format and keywords, like we said before. 25% make it in front of human eyes. On average, recruiters spend only 6 to 8 seconds on a job applicant before deciding. I'd say this is still like we said before, maybe like 20% of recruiters. A lot of them are going to take longer than that, but it's true that they're just going to kind of scan it. If it doesn't look right, they're not going to look too further. They could eliminate it quickly as they go through if they're not impressed with the first couple lines that they see, I would say. Only 3% of resumes result in an interview. Like I said, true to my experience. On average, this is probably why I bet some of these corporate jobs are getting about 250 resumes. It's a very general statement. I'd say it does vary by the position, but just I would say my takeaway there is they're going to get a lot of traffic. Ideal length of a resume is going to be about 475 to 600 keywords. And let's see what we have here. This is a Ladders study. Well, there's no exact answer, but recent research shows sweet spot for resume length is 475 to 600 words. And that's based on this talent work study of 6,000 job applicants over 66 industries with the sweet spot being 475. If you go over the 600 word mark, you're less than 43% chance likely to get hired. Wow, let's look at this graph here. So this is the word count, and here's your sweet spot, and it goes down about 40%. The longer you go, or even if you go shorter. So there's your sweet spot. So let's talk about resume structure now. Okay, so first off, in our Virginia Tech Career Planning Guide, here's a resume checklist. I'm gonna let you go through this on your own. That's page 21 here. And this will help you kind of go through every last details to check and make sure that you have everything on point for your resume. But as far as organizing, you start with like a planning page right here is always good. And you could even write it down in paper or even kind of do this process through like a ChatGPT or some sort of AI LLM. Again, it is important to 63% are going to prefer a 1 page long resume. So that's what you generally want to shoot for, unless you're on certain professions that we'll go through. But 77% of employers agree that more experienced candidates should have 2 page resumes. So if you're more experienced, then 2 page becomes more acceptable. But early on, there's definitely no need to have more than 1 page. You just want to pick your best experiences because, again, if they're only looking at your resume for under 60 seconds, a lot of them, then you don't want to have a lot of distractions on there. You want to highlight your best experiences and make sure they see those. Our team of resume experts collectively has more than 20 years of resume writing experience, allowing us to present you with the tried, proven resume fonts for 2025. So this is really just their opinion, not really based on a study, but they say Calibri is number one. I like Calibri as well. It's a nice format. I'm not sure what I use for mine, frankly, but maybe it is Calibri. I'll have to take a look at that. We'll look at that later in the video, actually. But once you should avoid, hopefully I'm not in the Times New Roman, because that's what we're saying we should avoid. And Arial, this is overused and boring, but so I mean, you look at this is kind of an opinion, right? It's Arial is the most common. It's I would say not necessarily super risky if 8 out of 10 are doing it. Not 8 out of 10 are necessarily getting filtered out if they're tailored properly. Ideal font size is going to be 10 to 12. Ideal length, again, is going to be 475 to 600. And again, when we look at structure of a resume, we'll look at some examples, but generally you're going to have a header, summary, some experience, education, skills and certifications, and then optional, some project leaders. So you don't really need all this stuff if you don't have those experiences. But in my example, you'll see I used leadership and volunteer experience quite a bit because there's a lot of transferable skills that I had there that I could apply to a lot of different positions. Skills are more and more important. I would say even more than they were 10 years ago. Education, obviously, and experiences are core. I don't necessarily have a summary or headline on mine, but it is very common. And then obviously you do need a header with your name and contact info there. So we'll get more into the specifics once we see the examples. Let's talk about PAR method. So the PAR method is a resume bullet formula that just gives you a framework on how to structure your bullet points and how to get the most out of that space. So for example, they say that you should always have an action, say what the situation is, what the result you're going for is, and then quantify the result. So, for example, you designed that your action, a brochure, that's your project, to attract students to attend the event, which is the result you're going for, which increased attendance by 20%. That's quantifying the result. I would say these bullet points are also important, not just for the PARS formula, but I would say also for you want to be able to tailor it to the actual job application, whatever they're asking for, the skills that they're asking for, you want to highlight those skills and you want to do that in this format, so to speak. So transferable skills are extremely important, especially if you're trying to crack into a new industry or you're just starting out, then you're going to want to be able to use these transferable skills to from experience that are not necessarily the same exact thing that you're applying for, but they're skills that are valuable in that industry. So if we again go back to our career ready skills, our soft skills, here's some examples of some resume bullet points that you might want to incorporate, and it goes by that similar format that we just looked at. Okay, section 4, turning job duties into accomplishment statements. So PAR method is just a lead into that and how we're able to highlight our experiences in a valuable way. So in addition, we're going to want to be able to be matching keywords from job descriptions, and we're going to incorporate action verbs and specific language that's tied to the actual job posting itself. How we're going to improve our chances. So first is going to be tailoring our applications. We're going to be focusing on transferable skills, and sometimes you might want to go where more job opportunities are. So be willing to travel. You open up yourself to more opportunities. And remote work also opens up to more opportunities nowadays as well. So what recruiters want to see on resume? So first and foremost, getting the experience on the resume is 70% of the role, but not all of it. So um, I would say first, just getting that experience, getting the degrees, getting valuable, relatable, transferable skills on the resume that apply to that job is important. Um, Customizing, so 54% of candidates don't tailor, right? So that hurts their chances. So tailoring your resume, especially, we have the tools nowadays to be able to do it, and that's just matching the job descriptions, right? And that's going to be the sliding the keywords in. We'll talk about how to do that. Concise summaries, keep the summaries brief. If we look here on summaries, so there's two things. If you're just getting started, you just want to list an objective, not necessarily a long summary. Summaries is more if you have experience. So example of that would be um, an objective is just Virginia Tech graduate pursuing full-time economics position that combines customer service with data analysts to inform decision making. So, and hopefully the job that they're applying for combines customer service with data analysis. So that would be relevant, right? And they might change that depending on the job or internship they're applying for. And then when you have more experience, one would be like experience statistical, spatial, and econometric modeling and analysis during 3 years of work, experience in economic and financial management analysis, excellent use of web-based coordination, business e-commerce strategy, and database management. Keep around 50 words. I don't know. This does seem kind of long in my opinion, but I think it is very common, but it's again at the expense of listing a valuable experience where I could put in bullet points and still keep it to one page. That's usually what I'm going to try to prioritize so it's easier on the eye. And I'm going to be able to get past that 20% of recruiters that are just going to scan it, as well as I'm going to have it loaded with keywords that are going to get past the ATS scan. And then like we said, formats are important, all of that. And just what they don't want to see is lack of customization. They don't want to see it obvious copy and paste AI to update this. Unprofessional email addresses is has to be, your ideally just your name is good. A personal email address is generally more appropriate. Gmail is very common, so that's what I use. Irrelevant, you don't want to be redundant. Irrelevant, you want to keep it on task. And if it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a perfect relatable job, but you could have transferable relevancy. Typos, you don't want to have typos. You want to have a nice clean format. You don't want to be too long. You want quantifiable bullet points and achievements, and avoid the cliches. Transferable skills, again, all these look familiar, right? A few more than what were on our Virginia Tech guide, but a lot of the same things that we talked about, right? Teamwork, adaptability, time management, project management, negotiation, creativity, emotional intelligence, networking, research, conflict resolutions, presentation skills, data analysis. A lot of that's just extrapolated, more detailed bullets on the same things. Let's talk about here. This is really good. So, first off, here's our resume, right? This is our sample resume, but here's our job posting. And so, this job posting is they're looking for teller experience. They want to be able to, someone who can meet customers' unique needs. They want to be able to have somebody who has to be able to manage transactions with deposits and withdrawals, all these other responsibilities, qualifications. All right, look at all they tell you what they're looking for. Great customer service skills, cash counting, currency packaging, and 2+ years of teller experience. Right, that's what they want. An associate's degree or higher preferred. Nice, associate's degree, right? Okay, so here you go. Here's how we do it. So let's start with the blue. Is bank teller, right? Teller experience, teller experience, teller experience, teller experience. And then a green is managing transactions, cash handling, high volume money counts, right? Cash accounting, currency packaging, right? There you go. And then the yellow is customer service, outstanding customer service, customer satisfaction, customer satisfaction, customer service. They put it as a whole line here, right? So this is tailored. This is going for what they're looking for, and you can see directly how they incorporate it. That's exactly what you want to do. And that's something that I would say it's good to go through that practice. Help if you're using AI as a partner in this, you could have it set up a format. You generally want to give it the format you want. There's a lot of like resume formatters that are probably even better there. Just lay out that, and then I would just use ChatGPT to refine statements and play it into a format, a generated format. Or just you have your main template. Once you have that, then you just kind of refine it as you go. I'll show you how I did that with mine. But then you just want to go to each job and you want to update it with these tailored experiences. This is a lot of words on this resume, so mine's a little bit less words. I'd say visually this is pretty dense. I don't know if I could really scan this in 10 seconds and get as much out of it, but I do like that it will pass an ATS scan at the very least. On the side note for AI, how does the AI help you in your job search? So this is how people are using AI. So finding relevant or matching job listings. So that's one way to use it. It's the most commonly used way. You could also use it for writing. I would say refining is even better. Cover letters, it's the same, about 48%. Generating interview questions. So you can use it to kind of quiz yourself and practice certain interview questions. Usage did decline a bit. Evaluating video interview style. So just kind of using it to prepare, I would say generally. But this is how people are using it, the most common usage. All right, so let's get into some examples now. So first off, this is a good example of somebody who's just getting started. And you see how the objective, they just keep it to one line: to obtain an internship that will enable me to further enhance my skills in becoming a strong professional. And you said they just have kind of some ski instructor experience. They were an athlete as well, and Eagle Scout. And you can see here's a refined version of the same resume. See, it looks a little more professional. This one right here, you can see how they list the education. They're not graduated yet, but you can see expected August blank. Awards and honors, dean's list. So it's good to all these things you could get on that resume to fill it. I think visually, this resume right here, if I zoom out, it looks full, but it's not overly full. It's really a nice spacing. I'd say the title could be a little cleaner. I like this title a little bit better, takes up a little bit less space. Has a little good flow to it, but a lot of content. But this one here, it does get a job for an internship that's skill heavy. They have skills at the top. Not necessarily a fan of like the boxes around the resume. You can see it's a little more clunky, a little bit tougher to scan with the visual eye. Here's an example so you can see all the other ones have the objectives, the one outline objectives from newer students. This is a summary of qualifications, so 3 years experience. See, that's when it's more appropriate to have the summary of qualifications. And they're still leading with their education, which is interesting, and putting the experience at the bottom, which I think they'll put that at the top after 3 years, but they do have it on the summary. They have it for transfer students, student athlete, international, design, teaching. See, the teaching is multiple pages. Federal is even longer. PhD is also long. CV, what's the difference between a CV and a resume? It's really you look into the CV, it's more based on research as well as experiences. So publications, abstractions, that's your difference. And cover letters we'll get into another time. All right, so now we're gonna get into my resume and we'll walk through that. So again, challenge with my resume is taking all these experiences and figuring out the right way to tailor it and curate it. And to obviously I need to really be able to emphasize transferable skills. That's why as far as when I look here, like the league experience really helped me and all these various teams that I was able to run. A lot of those were transferable skills that were I was able to apply to a lot of interview questions, right? It's very important to help answer these interview questions that we'll go through later on in the videos lineup here. But again, this is me, all my experience timeline, and getting down to current present day where adjunct professor, business development, and past experience here, buried in here, Steve Morgan Stanley. So that's going to be a highlight on a lot of my resumes. And just to start, this is kind of my journey starting about 10 plus years ago when I was in college here. So just like you saw in the Virginia Tech guide, here's some strong words to include on a resume. So just kind of some guides to help you out pre AI days. And here's an early resume, not necessarily glamorous, I would say. And I think I would hopefully have buttoned this up to one page here somehow, some way. But you can see I have kind of some spacing issues with the education, and it doesn't quite look right. And I have a big space here. I'm not a huge fan of this gigantic 32-inch font. And it looks like we're vecta, but yeah, it's not great here. And then 9, yeah, we want to be. And probably 11 is good. Let's Calibri 11 is a sweet spot. And then here's my baseball resume. I don't know why I did the cursiva with the red. Yeah, that's not a great look, but we have our bowling alley, my manager on there, education, skills, hobbies, activities. And then I put my baseball coaches here. This is when I was mainly baseball. Was my only experience as an athlete, student athlete. And then here's a project I went through while I was going through undergrad business school, where I had to kind of list out my experiences, just like we have in the Virginia Tech Guide. It's just kind of going through. First, I have my checklist, get all my skills down, put down my education, my coursework, all the honors that I've received along the way, any business experience that I have, any accomplishments between all these different. I was able to again take those experiences with baseball and the leagues I was running and get all of this transferable skills out of it, from scheduling to teaching, human resources, web tech, fundraising, marketing, team branding, and professional summaries. This is a little bit long, but we're getting there. And we have a framework, and then oh my goodness, this is just a lot. But see, 2 pages, just a little too much. Don't even really have a lot of experience, but just kind of we're not really there on the formatting either. And we're starting to incorporate a little bit. It's a little bit better, but still just too much. I have to just do less, 3 pages. Wow. Not gonna do the trick. And then here we go. I get to graduating and now I have to apply for an MBA and I get it down to 1 page. So this format's getting a little bit cleaner here. And we're able to actually say, here we go. So expected May 15th. So this is right before I graduate and want to apply for my MBA. So this is 2012 current. Just listed just like an experience. So it's just kind of a nice visual line down the right side. And just visually, if you unfocus your eyes, this is a nice format. Much better than the last one. If we look at our last one, just a mess. I can be able to scan that and see anything. Now you can. All the experiences are easy to read. It's not quite there yet, but we're getting there. A lot of this I would just format a little bit better as far as separating out those experiences and highlighting them in better ways. Again, this isn't much different, but this is the one I use for. I submitted 2 MBA applications. They're basically the same if I look at those. Years updated, still expected, not really much different, but I did, instead of having the additional information, I put references here. Again, references not quite needed unless they ask for it. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend putting references actually, but it's there that, like I said, we're not there yet. This is my journey along the way. I didn't quite realize that yet. So if we go here, same thing. I think we're maybe getting a little bit better on the bullet points, but you see these bullet points, maybe this one's okay, but I'm not necessarily using that format to the correct extent. But now you can say, okay, we're getting a little bit cleaner with our heading here. But this isn't redundant information. You don't have to say mobile, LinkedIn, email. You really just have, that's obvious that this is what that is. So you just list it instead of saying what it is. See, it's starting to get, I kind of separate my baseball experience, my league experiences, leadership and volunteering, like I said. So that's what I'm going to highlight as transferable skills. These are going to be great on interview questions when it gets to passion and all of that. What do I like to do? It's just, it's going to feed into everything. So, and it's going to be right there. Like I said, it leads into all the interview questions. And also you can load this up with relevant keywords. And then I have some good experience now because I have Morgan Stanley, and I have now you can see, okay, clearly I was there for 3 years at the rack spot, and I have an MBA as well as a bachelor's. So okay, now we're getting a little bit more professional, and then we even get a little bit more simple on the header there, work experience, and now I list just Morgan Stanley because it was there for about 5 years. So I can say, okay, that's my experience. This is right when I left. Then we have education, and then we have volunteering. We could just say, okay, league, MBA, Morgan Stanley, references. Again, I didn't really need the references. I would probably update that to skills if I was giving myself advice here. I think this would be a little bit better. All right, so this one I did get an interview out of. This was one of the 1 in 4 interviews, and this was at Salesforce here. And you can see I buttoned up the appearance a little bit. So you can see there's a lot of space here, a little bit too much white space almost, and then it just kind of tightens up. And I wanted to be able to get a lot of stuff in there without overwhelming the page too much. But I wanted to make it full. I didn't want to cheat myself. And you don't ever want to cheat yourself on these resumes. This is your opportunity to brag. Interviews are your opportunity to brag about yourself and sell your experience and why you're the right person and why you want to do it, right? We'll get more into that. But staying on the resume, you can see visually it's nice, and I did get all my key experience. I did consolidate the education in order to get more sales experience because I wanted to be very relevant and I wanted to be able to get more and more of those keywords that are going to pass. Also, what helped big time in this one is I was able to apply through referral links, so it was able to bypass the ATS system altogether and get directly to eyeballs, essentially a human recruiter that was able to look at it and reach out for an interview. Anthropic, this one you can see very similar role, so similar format, but if I look, you can see the words change. So I am tailoring these bullet points to what they're asking for, the relevant skills they're asking for in the resume. And I'm getting a little bit more to the formula and quantitative with the results that we're getting in the bullet points there. Really, I like this format, but let's see look at that. See what it looks like if I switch this from Times to Calibri. Wonder what my percentage would have been if I was Calibri, but look at that, it doesn't fit. I don't know. I don't know. We might have to, we're always tinkering. We're always tinkering. I'm not sure what I think about it. Not sure what I think about it. I don't think that's too bad. It's always evolving, and I would say you're kind of going for those next improvements. So just kind of incorporating these ideas, I think helps. But I think at the end of the day, it's the persistence and it's the effort and it's putting the like I said, keeping your net in the water, keeping those opportunities available to yourself to get lucky, and see some success. All right, so that's it for my resume walkthrough. You saw how I went from retail to finance to teaching to AI and kind of tried to weave that through with my current updated LinkedIn, which is going to become my updated resume, maybe my updated font. Who knows? Maybe I'll incorporate some sort of objective. These are all feedback that I could give myself. And then let's see, example bullets. Continue to try to add more and more par like statements and soft skills into and transferable skills into these bullet points, but most importantly, make sure they mirror, like we saw in our other example earlier, the actual job posting and what they're asking for. And we wanted to create a cohesive narrative because, again, we're going to use this as a way to control the narrative during our interviews. And that's why storytelling can help differentiate you and ultimately you need the right person interviewing you, but that's all part of luck in generating these opportunities, which having is why we're talking about having a good resume. So that's going to be it for this video, but next video we're going to talk about cover letters, and cover letters are going to be extremely important because even more so than resumes, you could really sort of tailor that to the experience. It's a way to, the reason why I haven't had summaries on the resumes that I showed you is because I put that summary and I put a lot of thought into the cover letter. And a lot of people don't put in cover letters, so it is a way to separate yourself. And I would say in a lot of sort of these career roles, or if you're applying for an MBA, it's a requirement to have a cover letter. And I think it's very important to explain why you want to do that. And that's where you start kind of taking that experience and connecting the dots, and showing your passion for that role. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. You know what time it is. Take care.